Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Never Ending Podcast on YouTube, Stolen Nostalgia. I am as currently joined by my amazing partner, Cassandra Lynn. Hello, Cass. How is you?
I'm okay.
Just okay, even after seeing that god-awful movie.
We'll get there.
So today's Stolen Nostalgia is one very reminiscent of childhood for me. From songs like The Candyman to Pure Imagination, I'm pretty sure goosebumps occur every time I hear that song. Again, there is a book to this movie, but for the purposes of this podcast, the podcast theme, we will be focusing more so on the movies, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You said you've read the book?
Mm-hmm.
So the book was written by Roald Dahl, entitled Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The sequel book, which came out in 1972, was entitled Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator.
See, I didn't even know that.
So here's an interesting little thing I wanted to mention to you. So, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Willy Wonka has 5 golden tickets inside chocolate bars. The finders rewarded a tour of his factory, each accompanied by an adult of their choice. We both know the story. The children are unaware, though, that the tour is also a competition to test their moral character. As for the proceeds, as the tour proceeds, 4 of the children are eliminated, leaving Charlie Bucket the winner. At this point, Wonka reveals that the real prize is the factory itself, as he needs someone to take it over and look after Oompa Loompas who work there once he retires. Here's an interesting tidbit from the book. Wonka is introduced as a little man with a goatee, wearing a purple coat, green trousers, and a top hat. He is high-spirited and moves quickly like a squirrel, though he later tells Charlie that he is much older than you think. So that makes him sound like a fantasy character or something, which is weird.
Yeah.
So we all know that story. The sequel book, The Great Glass Elevator.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't even know there was a sequel.
Wonka goes aboard the Great Glass Elevator with Charlie and his family and links up with the Space Hotel USA. The Space Hotel tracks the elevator down back to Wonka's factory. Wonka then goes with Charlie and his family to the White House in the United States.
What?
I have no idea. How do you
Never
go
heard
from
of this in my life.
how do you go from that to, and then he goes to space.
Honestly, hearing about this sequel book makes Tim Burton's adaptation on this seem a little better. Because that's a really out of left field.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know when the books were written. I know
1964
Okay.
is the first one, and then 72 is the second one.
So 1971 was when Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory came out.
Yes.
The movie.
Yes.
So at least that came out before this Great Glass Elevator book.
Right. So, and one last tidbit on the Wonka films before we dive into it. There's a prequel titled Wonka, set to focus exclusively on Willy Wonka's origins. Will be released by Warner Brothers on December 15th, 2023.
No way.
Yes, this
a
will
book?
be the third... No, movie. This will be the third major film to feature the character. Wonka himself will be portrayed by Timothée Chalamet. And
I don't know who that is, but...
I've looked up images of him in the Wonka costume, and it's very... It leans heavy on the aesthetics of the Burton in the sense of, the color scheme. So it's not like the vibrant purple that we saw.
So we're going to have to, just hearkening back to our first podcast about Alice in Wonderland, with the new ones slated to come out at no date given, but now another version of this one to come out, we're almost going to have to, revisit these topics.
Well, what's interesting to me, too, is that it's
Do you think...
No one's touched the sequel book's story. Everyone who's made a movie is yeah, I'm not going into space.
Yeah, I'm not going to space.
Let's do a prequel, an origin story of Wonka.
You know what? And this is a little spoiler for something we'll talk about in the podcast, but wouldn't it be insane if the prequel movie does have his dad as a dentist?
I will be so pissed off.
As soon as you said that it's about a prequel about his life, I'm like, dentist dad.
Dentist dad. They can't get Christopher Lee anymore. He's dead. Um, so first thing I was going to talk about, based on the fact that Roald Dahl wrote the book, we also were kind of surprised to see that for the 1971 version, he had a hand, or he didn't have a hand, but he wrote the screenplay.
He wrote the screenplay for it.
And with another guy too, David Setzer, I think was the name I saw. But yeah, he wrote the screenplay and had a hand in the production of Willy Wonka. What are your thoughts on that, having seen both movies?
I think it makes the most sense, or I guess it makes me accept it better as like a true vision, because the book was written by him and then the screenplay for the movie was by him, so he single-handedly, well, he may not have been the only one, but he approved everything for the way that it happened because it brought his book's vision to life and he was part of that. So you know me, I'm always going to be like, what's the original story and how genuine are we being when we're talking about adaptations and recreations in the world of nostalgia. So I feel like I would almost lump the original book and the original movie from 1971 as almost like a shared package, I guess. I would say. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say one ripped off the other or anything like that, but I think that it stays true to the original story because the creator who wrote the original story also
wrote the
screenplay.
So like he adapted it the way he thought it should be adapted to film, and that's music included, which is interesting.
Yes.
Because it's like, I don't think he breaks into song in the book. That's kind of hard to write.
I don't remember, so I don't have a clear vision.
My guess would be the Oompa Loompa stuff is like poems.
I don't remember.
That'd be my guess.
It's always something that could be thrown into these podcasts, that if there's a book that exists, I could reread the books and then have a talking point from there. But I know that we said that wasn't what we were focusing on. And I read the book probably...
Well, and mainly because...
maybe late elementary, early middle. So I have no idea.
I mainly feel that way for this one in particular because, like, so you had read Alice and, like, knew a ton about Alice. And so I felt like... But even Alice was more nostalgic for you than for me.
Yes.
But this book is not nostalgic for us, and that's why I was kind of like, I've never read the book, so I'm not gonna include that as part of my like. They ripped off my nostalgia.
Yeah, well, I think when people think of Willy Wonka and Charlie, they think of the 1971 movie.
Yeah.
Whereas Alice, everybody knows that's deeply rooted in book originally. At least that's my perception.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I think so. Him having a hand in the writing, especially, and then even he was probably. I mean, I would dig in on this, I guess, but there was dialogue between him and Wilder, how Wonka should be, how can Wilder put his spin on it, and that's something I'll bring up later too, is like how you put a spin on a character and how it can either go right or wrong.
Yes.
Because especially based on that description of him having a goatee and like being little. And Wilder's a little squirrely, I guess, in that role, but not...
I mean, but it seems like he took that and directly related it to try to make it like a real-life situation.
Kind of, yeah. Like a real-life person, too.
Yes.
And because he was capable of even the little bit of prop falling and stuff that he did, it kind of sold that value a lot more, that Wonka was this kind of guy that would do a tumble coming out of his factory and, like, making things... a little comical, or I mean, he just seems very acrobatic in that sense anyway. So Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. What do you like about this movie the most, do you think? Doesn't have to be one thing,
having watched it and grown up with it, again, very nostalgic to me. Like the second we turned it on to watch it again, it just like brought back all the same feelings. There's actually a lot of the movie that I didn't necessarily like remember details of, but there's very specific things that like stuck in my head, things that I remembered, and it was a lot of the songs.
Yeah.
But it was also
you were
just...
singing along. It was
yeah, I was. It's also just, I don't know, it's just a feel good.
Yeah.
There are parts of the movie that I don't like, which I told you, like when they get on the boat thing, like used to terrify the shit out of me when I was a kid. I
But
hated
even
it.
that itself is nostalgic.
In a
Like, you
way,
know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, I still remember it in great vivid
Because when you watch
detail.
it now, you're like, it's a back screen and like,
No, but it just is
you
like
know,
such
it's vivid imagery.
yes, I think what I love about the movie so much is it's just like a I don't know, it's I feel like it's a very typical story in the way that it's about some poor kid winning.
Just your age old story of poor people winning.
Well, I mean, poor people being able to get a leg up somehow to get out of their circumstances.
It's like when someone has to dig themselves out of a grave that they've been digging.
Yeah,
with a
for sure.
statement, poor people winning.
I don't know. I feel like it's a very like fairy tale story, but it's applied more in like a real life kind of setting, I guess. If that makes sense.
Very like that's another really good point. This movie, the world, because we also looked up, it was like somewhere in Germany they filmed this movie, and the world that it is like feels lived in. It doesn't
Yes.
feel cartoony, and like
No.
so I really like that element, and like there's these glimpses of suspense kind of when they like in the very beginning when he's by the Wonka gate, the gates to the factory, and you see the Wonka like light up on the smokestack or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of eerie, and like
Oh,
and then the
that's a
guy with like
creepy
the weird
scene.
like hatchet
It
selling man.
just casually selling my hatchets and
Dude,
my knives.
I don't know. Like at first I thought he was like a street sweep or something, but then I just saw it was all like blades swinging.
Well, like again, that's another scene as a kid, like he called him a tinker in the movie, but as a kid,
Well, it's a
I
tinker.
thought it was someone that like just I guess I associated it with something like someone murdering people. And I'm like, why is this guy carrying knives and so he just sells them to people? Like you need a knife to cut up your steak or kill someone or
Well, and he's like the one that gives that creepy line. You're like, no one goes in and no one comes
no
out.
one ever comes out.
And so there's these like eerie elements, and it makes you, even as a kid, I remember being like, who the heck is Willy Wonka? Like, what is happening? Like, I thought he was gonna be like a villainous kind of character at first. I
Yeah.
had no idea the cheer of that movie the first time I saw it.
But you also have to keep in mind the fact that the story of Willy Wonka brought to life the fact that we had Wonka candy.
Yeah.
So it's like I grew up. I think it's obviously still exists now, like
Yeah.
Nerds Ropes, and maybe that's all Nestle. I'm not exactly sure.
Well, it's owned by Nestle now.
Yes,
The name
that's
is,
true.
the
So
name
it is all technically Nestle.
Yeah.
But I remember the candy saying Willy Wonka bars and stuff like that. But
thought I had
tried to
too.
look that up, and it said it never existed. That Nestle's owned it as Wonka.
Well, and I thought that I also saw like his picture on stuff sometimes, and like I would see like
I don't
Wonka
remember
commercials as a
that.
kid.
I remember seeing Wonka commercials as a kid. But I think I don't know. Maybe I should have done some research into that. I don't know when the candy was being made.
Right.
I just remember getting it at Halloween
Hmm.
and stuff all the time. Or like the little bottle caps were Wonkas.
Yeah.
And so it's like eating those, so then it brought to life the vision. It almost like I didn't ask for it, but it almost like gave me a story
Dude, imagine
as
if
if the factory actually made all of our candy.
we can look this up later, and people listening can look it up. But imagine if Roald Dahl like made a candy company out of this whole thing, and like became
That was his side
like,
hustle.
yeah, mega rich selling candy bars and like licorice whips and all this stuff.
But I think that lends itself to, in a way, it's still being relevant. Like, yes, us as, I'm always going to reference to us as parents because we are parents, but in the way of like, we will show our kid movies we grew up with. And so I think even the candy, in a way, kind of can make that still relevant today for kids
Yeah.
to be curious enough about something, maybe. But I do have to mention, because I mentioned it last time, and we haven't talked about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Tim Burton yet, but our son, having seen both, said he liked the original.
I was gonna bring that up too. Yeah, I thought that
And
was really. He was talking about it again today.
Yes.
He thought Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was the original, and he was like, "I like the remake," and I was like, "That's not the remake. That's the
It's the
original. It came
original.
out in 1971." But yeah.
So I almost want to, maybe this will be a conversation I have with him, but I almost want to pick his brain as to why, because Tim Burton made the latter version of this
You
and
know what
made
he
the
told
latter
me?
version of Alice, yet he liked the latter version of Alice, but the original of Willy
He
Wonka.
said that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was too much like death. Like there was no color, like all this
Oh,
stuff.
really?
Isn't that ironic considering those are the complaints I had about Alice?
That was, yeah.
But he's flipped the script and being like, yeah, that's he was like, it's too much like death, and I was like, it's dark. It's not about death. Like it's just dark.
I think what sells him on the Alice in Wonderland by Tim Burton is that she fights, because he's such a sucker for like medieval and
Yeah, I didn't think about
you
that.
know, so I think he likes the suit and the armor and fighting
does.
fighting a dragon, which he is very convinced is not. It's a Jabberwocky, but whatever. We're not talking about that. That's
Yeah.
not the movie of topic right now.
No. So I think that's a really good point with the candy too. And that was something you kind of made mention of when we were watching the movie. So Wonka, puts the golden tickets in the candy bars and ships them out and stuff. But then you were like, it's a great marketing plan.
Yeah.
And it's like,
if that happened in real life,
Oh,
that
man.
is the smartest marketing campaign in the world.
well, and
He
especially if
made
if your factory is that
millions.
mysterious, then yeah. You know
Well,
what I
yeah,
mean?
but I mean, it's just like he would make millions. Like, I just think about it in a modern day real life setting.
It'd be Bezos.
Yeah,
It'd
he'd
be like,
make
"Do you wanna tour an
millions, and
Amazon
then
factory?"
any prize that he gave away to anyone, he'd pay for, and then still make millions for himself. He'd pay for from the people buying the tickets trying
This
to get
is
in.
the algorithm room. This is where we determine exactly what it is that you've been buying, and we start sending you things that we think you want.
It's funny because I never thought about it that way as a kid. Obviously, I don't.
No,
You
of
don't
course not.
consider
You just want candy.
marketing to you. You're like, hell yeah, candy.
Yeah.
But as an adult who has worked within marketing and everything too, it's just like, that is genius. Could be a billionaire.
So and then in like even watching through that part too and being like you said that like even the news being reported like that the way that was, there's so much like. Yeah, we can just say it's like, times have changed and blah, blah, blah. But there's the point of this podcast, especially, is that it is stolen nostalgia. Yes, times have changed. That does not mean that everything needs to be modernized. It does not
No.
mean that everything, well, we had a Willy Wonka, let's make another one. Like, and now we're making another one. And so, like, that's what's so frustrating to me is like, yes, while these things are like, oh, it's like so dated because it's like 70s newscaster kind of stuff, like, but that's the point. Like, it's a capsule, man. It's a time capsule, and you get to look back and be like, "Wow, I didn't live in the
think-
'70s, but I was still like, that's so
No,
crazy. No
but
cell phones, no
I
whatever."
think it's interesting that like Willy Wonka is a time capsule in that way, and it speaks volumes to like what the world was like because it seems realistic. But then you think about what the hell is the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory version going to be like when people look back at that?
Right.
Like, where will we be?
Mike TV is probably the only thing that has a close enough modern day reference. And this was like '05 when that came out, but like playing video games, right? Like
Yeah.
that's something people can
Gosh,
be
that
like.
came out in '05. I
Yeah.
don't even
Yeah.
think I wrote that down. It's still garbage. That's what I think.
That's right. But so and so the kids when they get the tickets, there is so much. First of all, the music. There is so much in this movie that's not just horrible Oompa Loompa rap, but is like really, really great songs that you can hum and know the lyrics to and sing along with.
Well, and they're just so feel
Except for Cheer Up, Charlie.
Yeah. That was also probably one of my least favorite scenes growing up. I was like, I don't need her to
Honestly,
come out and sing some stupid song while he cries. I don't
blanked
care.
on it. I fucking blanked on it. Like
I
when it came up,
remembered
I was like, oh, I don't remember him visiting his mom.
Cheer
And
up, Charlie.
yeah, I don't remember his mom being visited by him. And then like I was like, I completely just ejected this scene from my memory of the movie because when it came up, I had I was like, what? And you were singing the song along, and I was like. I don't fucking remember this song because I think it's probably because it's so bad.
Come on, Charlie.
And
but
it,
any millennial, and I mentioned this and was laughing about it while we were watching it, but any millennial knows the Come to Candy Mountain, Charlie.
Oh my god.
And that's all I kept thinking when she was singing about Charlie. I was thinking about the unicorns hopping around going to Candy Mountain. And then
I
we were
just thought
watching
about
Willy
Charlie bit my
Wonka
finger,
about
but-
candy, so it all just worked.
It's really funny. So, but the music again, the Candyman, like right in the beginning. So much fun. I showed you the scene where the girl gets slammed in the chin by the when he opens the door.
Never noticed that before.
Or when he lifts the counter, she just gets clocked. And if no one's ever seen that, go back and watch Willy Wonka 1971. In the very beginning of the movie, when the Candyman's singing his song, he lifts the counter to like let the kids through, and he just clocks a girl right in the chin. And they just left that shot in there. It's just like, dang.
Well, she wasn't even day. She's like, Candy, that's my next move.
So, man. But like that song is so great. There's elements to it where I'm like, whoa, he's a little creepy with the kids, but he's a Candyman.
My favorite scene, and I think 90% of people who love and appreciate this movie's favorite scene, is when they go into the room where everything's edible.
Yes.
And the song that he sings as they're walking down the stairs, like
pure imagination.
That is perfect.
It's perfect while they're singing it.
Yes.
And because that's actually him singing. And what's crazy is like his introduction as Willy Wonka. Well, first of all, I want to talk about the kids real quick, too, because we both really liked these kids in this movie. I think the characters are portraying
they're
anyway.
Perfect.
I mean, even someone like Augustus Gloop who could be forgettable, makes an impact.
Officially, what is his last name? I never looked it up. See, I thought so, but in the movie, they're like, Augustus Glue. And I'm like, Glue is not his last name.
Well, they're saying it like in German, I think.
I don't know.
Like that German accent.
Augustus Glue. Augustus Glue. And I'm like, his last name's not Glue.
Well, I think it's funny, like even Veruca Salt, like her last name being Salt and her dad's company or factory is Salt's Peanuts. It's just like, it's little things like that you know is a Roald Dahl
Violet Beauregard.
Yeah.
Love that name.
Dude, yeah. So I think you're turning violet. Again, so like I think that, these kids did a really good job. Like all of them are very memorable. And when we talk about the other movie later, like you'll see that it's almost like direct plays off nostalgia, but because it's not so much about anyway, we'll get to that. Like you said, meeting Wonka, seeing how like he can be zany, but we were talking about this, he's extremely charming. Introducing himself to the kids.
Oh, yeah.
Like, shaking hands, like, kind of having a little snark with a couple of them, but not like being like creeped out by them.
No, and I think you're missing context here. I think it's about time we jump into the Charlie and Chocolate Factory before we start
because he's so a creep in that one.
I love on your notes Willy Wonka and how great it is. Charlie, how what the fuck it is.
Because that's all I can think about. It is what the fuck.
I struggle because we talked about it pretty in depth last time with Alice, that I personally am a big fan of Tim Burton. But holy shit, between Alice in Wonderland and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I don't even know who this person is.
5 years apart.
I don't even know. I don't know who this person is. I don't know his vision. He is not an artist to me, and these are garbage.
Yes.
I hate it.
I feel like this is almost 5 or 6 years after Sleepy Hollow.
That's so crazy.
That is crazy because Sleepy Hollow is a decently fun movie too for the darkness that it is. So Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is disgusting.
He hates the kids. It's almost like he wants them to die. It is not the same vibe. We get up to his castle when he goes to let the kids in who won.
His factory.
It has like this.
Looks like a castle.
It does. See?
This whole thing has like dour imagery.
But it's a modern version of the Disneyland. It's a Small World.
Yeah, kind of.
Comes out the front gate or front door, and everything catches on fire, and it's the most awkward, uncomfortable thing.
I don't even know if it was meant to be funny or not.
He was like, ha! And I'm like, oh my god, this laugh. It's the first time I'm hearing it, and I hate it already.
Yeah, I don't know if them starting on fire was meant to be funny or not. Like, I don't know what the purpose of that was.
I mean, so there's a few things to mention that we've already left out right away. In Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Charlie has a dad.
Yeah, and in Willy
which
Wonka he doesn't.
didn't exist in Willy Wonka. I wrote down that I said Nestle Chocolate Factory. Holy shit. Because the intros to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is just like as if we're watching a episode of How It's Made.
Yeah.
Of like chocolate. Because it's going through all the machinery.
I always felt like it should have music like bum bum bum. Because the other one's very dreamlike. The intro is very dreamy with like the chocolate being poured over candy and things like that.
Yeah, and I feel like if I remember correctly, in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, they try to give us background of Wonka before we meet him. And he makes a big, useless Indian chocolate palace.
Yes.
That melts.
That was a completely stupid side quest.
Don't know what the purpose of that story was.
I don't know. Like to show his grandeur and like what he could make when it's like people just liked his fucking candy and he was a recluse. So like that was the only thing that made him like mysterious was that no one saw him for years. That was it. It's not because like I once heard he built a palace out of chocolate. Like
yes, that's what it was.
It's overkill again.
So that stuff was really weird.
Charlie having no dad having a dad in this one and no dad in the first one is really interesting because it also made you realize why he globbed onto Grandpa Joe. So in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, they make his dad super absent because of work, and it's like, well, why not just omit him then? So he still globs onto Grandpa Joe. The
story of everything. Well, I didn't even feel like it was that. He globbed onto Grandpa Joe in the first one, and there was this fantastical...
Well, Grandpa Joe's the only male figure.
Like, whole situation with the beautiful song and the grandpa having to relearn how to walk, which is physically impossible. But in the second one, in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, he just stands and be like, I'm going.
Well, because I was going to say,
okay.
Speaking of, like... The grandpa from the original compared to this grandpa here, it's like... That guy, like, when he gets out of the bed... It's like this moment of vibrancy that comes to him and he starts dancing and then he's good to go, right?
Yeah.
This guy looks like the mummy from The Mummy. And like he's like like I was looking at pictures of it again when I was researching and I was like, God, he just looks like he's on death's door, man. And like, well, Grandpa Joe was supposed to maybe portray that. Like he was supposed to be a grandpa. He was excited about life and like he was like, let's drink fizzy lifting drinks and all this stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like this grandpa, that's why that scene's not in this movie because you can't fucking picture this guy being like, wanna be bad, Charlie? like it's so bad.
Don't bite my tobacco, I buy you chocolate.
No mention of tobacco in this movie.
That's because it's a new modern...
It's a thing that doesn't exist in the world.
Yeah.
We're tired of lying to citizens.
So that was disappointing, and I didn't even notice. Never in my life, and this maybe says more about me on a personal level, but I never noticed that in Willy Wonka, Charlie didn't have a dad.
I pointed it out to you. I was like, notice the difference.
I was like, what?
No dad. And you're like, oh my God.
I was like, no. I'd never...
It makes a lot more sense.
In all my 33 years of my life, how many times I've watched Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and I've never thought of that.
I think his dad's probably dead. This could be like a post-war thing or a wartime thing even.
Well, that's left up to our interpretation.
Sure.
But as soon as you said that, I was like, that's what was messed up. Yeah. Even more about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Because again, his dad does jack all. Like so here's the thing. Adaptation, changing a movie. Using the title, here's what's interesting about this one. Using the title of the book and making it entirely like the original, like trying to play off the nostalgia of the original. Supposedly trying to introduce new ideas, and we'll get to some of those. But the idea of introducing the dad, if you're going to do an adaptation, you want to do this thing, you know what it would have been an amazing story to tell? Because if you're going to make up a dad for Willy Wonka too and have him be a dentist.
Oh my God.
Then you should have Charlie be closer to his dad. Let his dad be the Grandpa Joe role in this movie. Then Willy Wonka sees the connection between these two and then that can play off of his own trauma with his father. So that's like, this is how you can tell a story. You can use your characters.
That's a great point, is if, Willy Wonka had this whole situation with his dentist father issue.
How stupid that is, you could do something with it.
And then Charlie had a dad the whole time, so
Right.
there's nothing for them to connect
there.
on. Yeah.
It's so stupid. And it's like the whole Steven Spielberg thing where he has a thing about dads and like hates dads or whatever. And it's like, I feel like that way with Tim Burton sometimes where I'm just like, why add a dad just so you could shit on him? Like, why?
Yeah.
He works at a
He added
toothpaste
2
factory.
dads.
He added 2 dads. That's crazy.
He added a dad that was never there.
And
in
then
both situations that we discussed.
He added Wilbur Wonka, which is only accredited as Willy Wonka's father from the '05 movie. So it's a completely made up character.
Not. I was going to say, I don't remember. There was no mention of his parents in the book.
No,
so.
He's older than we think he is. That's the mystery of that at the end, too, I'm imagining.
The other thing I wrote, and just trying to cover the beginning of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I wrote the only thing that reminds me of what Tim Burton has always been was the house.
Yeah, and even that,
the Crooked House, it was exactly like the Crooked House in Big Fish, where the same lady was inside of it.
True, Helena Bonham Carter.
Yes.
Yeah. The witch.
Yeah, she was in the Leaning House in Big Fish, and she's in the Leaning House in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
I think, again, what I think is interesting is that it shows the Leaning House thing, and like we were talking about with the city of the other one, is a real city, feels lived in, feels real. They don't need a leaning house. They just had a nasty shack, but like that Burton-esque style, which you're right, it is his style, but it's like...
That's it, though.
It's like, again...
They are literally the only dumpy house in the entire world in that movie. Everybody else is like in a 5-story walk-up.
Because if you really want to talk about Tim Burton style, you can't talk about Tim Burton style without bringing up like Dr. Seuss's style and stuff. So like, that stuff like that I can kind of get behind. But then you're going to have these heavy themes with fathers and stuff. Why the dentist? I guess because it's such in contrast to Candy.
Well, and the dumbest part of it, jumping way ahead into the movie, they reunite, and then he has never taken care of his teeth, and suddenly he has no cavities. Like, are we trying to, like, encourage kids to not brush their teeth here because they're fine?
Dentists are bad. Chocolate will clean your teeth.
Chocolate is good. Like, I just didn't understand.
How do you brush your teeth? I just swish chocolate. Just gargle chocolate syrup.
So I was sad about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. None of these songs existed, period. They replaced it with the Oompa Loompa rap, 10-minute long breakdowns for each thing, which we'll talk about. The other thing I was really disappointed just going through, the timeline of the movie is the scene where they get into to recreate the favorite scene from the first one. That was a shitty room.
It was dank and dark and gross.
And there were no big gummy bears, which automatically gets a fail for me. But that's just personal. I was disappointed in all of that. The little boat ride was nothing like it, but it's interesting because
Did they do the boat ride? I thought they just went into the glass elevator.
No, they did. No, they went into a boat.
I don't remember that. I thought they went because I was waiting for the boat
thing.
Because then they did the dramatic glass elevator movements and stuff.
Not all of them got into the glass elevator.
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
They went into the boat and then they just went into... There was no scary racing thing. There was no song.
I really liked that part.
But you could tell that they pulled it out because people like me thought it was scary when I was a kid.
I mean, but it's Roald Dahl too.
But
again, like I said, if you've never seen Witches, it's right on his tone.
I'm missing the biggest point that makes so much of this movie feel irrelevant because they go through the boat in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and they go to his imagination zone or his inventing area.
His imagination station or whatever it's called.
They go in there and there's a mention of the everlasting gobstoppers, and then we just move on.
Right,
and
no
get
Slugworth.
Back in the boat.
There's no Slugworth in this
There
one.
is no plot story to me. I wrote that.
There's no test of morality. And also, let's make mention again, Willy Wonka, Gene Wilder is very charming, doesn't seem to hate the kids or feel like he's allergic to them. Meanwhile, Depp's Willy Wonka can barely even say the word parents without vomiting in his mouth for some reason.
Up and everyone looks at him
it's
weird.
Completely it's like as if you were trying to shove kids into Michael Jackson's face and he was just like, he's just like, no, I can't be associated.
Well, and then the dumb thing is why say parents all stupid? Because he never mentions his mom.
Right.
Why not just call it a dad? And then they switched up a lot of the people's parents that went with them.
Yes, that was interesting too.
Like they switched out a mom for a dad for most of the kids, or a dad for a mom.
And they tried to really, they picked kids that were almost identical to some of the other
Yeah,
kids.
I was going to say.
Except for one girl was blonde. Violet was
yes,
blonde.
I was going to say that I think one thing that I did like about this movie was the kids looked perfect.
Yeah.
As perfect as they could be in a modern version.
But that's weird too, because it's like, why would you then do that but not do anything to reminisce? You know what I mean? Like,
well, I think the reason that they did that, or Tim Burton did that, or whoever chose these
Whoever the casting
kids
director
was specifically doing it to make them look the same. Because
Right.
I would have been pissed if they didn't look anything like the original characters.
yeah, I guess.
I would have.
I could see that. There's an
Because
interesting...
that brought, to me personally, that brought some part to it of feeling like I was watching a remake. Because
Yeah.
the kids were the same.
Right. It's, I don't know, man.
So I think that helped.
I just feel like it's
But the
still,
Oompa Loompas killed it.
I was going to say, it's still...
Period.
Nothing good came from it because... So even getting the glass elevator stuff was stupid to me. Again, what I've always complained about with Tim Burton's latter career movies is the overusage of CGI. Like you said, like he's not an artist now. Like it doesn't feel like he's an artist. None of this stuff feels like it's coming from his brain. It's interpretations by graphic designers or whoever that does this stuff. I feel like because of that too, like I was gonna mention this earlier, but like even so, the whole idea of using the same guy for each Oompa Loompa was like quote unquote groundbreaking at the time.
I actually think it's pretty damn offensive.
I think, wow, really?
Yes.
Wow.
When you think about the original Oompa Loompas, these were actual individual human beings, but also characters, and their names were recognized in the movie. Like, sure,
Yeah.
this guy that was the Oompa Loompa in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, his name is obviously mentioned, but there's no individuality there.
Hmm.
And maybe that's just me applying too much of like a real life. Does that make sense?
Well, why couldn't you just hire like 100 or more little people or whatever to like...
I don't know what the proper...
I mean, I've heard a lot of different
Yeah.
propers. It depends on what side of the pond you're on.
But I almost find it a little bit offensive, and the reason I say that is because there is no individuality there, and you could have brought so many people in to fill those character slots like they did in the first movie. But instead, you CGI'd the entire thing and made it one really disgusting, creepy looking guy.
And absolutely just some of the worst
Like, that's
fucking
lazy.
music
So
I've ever heard in my life.
Well, to hear it's groundbreaking is gross.
Well, I'm saying the
because it's
technology
lazy.
to duplicate the guy. And now it could be
Stupid.
considered lazy, but at the time they didn't have the ability to do something like that on that scale, and so they were proud of the technology
Yeah.
behind it.
I agree with you though. Music was god awful.
Absolutely some of the worst I've ever heard. Nothing joyful. There was like a metal song, a rap song, there was some other stuff, but like none of it made me want to sing along for one.
No, and it really made us, because we watched the new version before the remake. At least we have the last 2 times. And I hope we move forward with that, because then we went back and watched Willy Wonka and saw the Oompa Loompas. Like, their song was pretty much the same. They just changed a few words and it was rhymey, but it was all relevant to the incident that had just happened.
Well, and there's a
It wasn't
continual
like a
theme too.
full-on breakdown of this like little dance charade where the
Yeah.
kid's not even involved in it, and it just like it
A
was.
squirrel chasing around and then a bunch of squirrels pushing a girl into a trash chute. 'Cause
No,
she was
I
a
wrote-
quote unquote
oh my
bad
God.
nut and not a
I
bad
wrote
egg.
the jungle scene was not necessary, because in the original movie he talks about how he saved them all from Loompa Land or whatever. And in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, he takes us on an excursion through the jungle.
Yeah.
Stupid, in my opinion. I wrote,
That's when the idea of show don't tell goes wrong.
I said the special effects don't pay off. Violet turning into a blueberry was awkward and almost nightmarish with the music.
Yeah.
I was really, really pissed at the Veruca salt.
She didn't even sing, and that's like the best song in the movie.
Yes.
I want the world.
I want the whole world.
The whole
Like-
world.
I want it now. But it was a
It's
golden
great.
egg,
It was,
and it
yeah,
made
she was
sense.
a bad egg.
Because yes, but it also made sense on the fact that it was gold. She wanted
Right.
something gold.
Why did she
was
want a nut
clearly
squirrel?
ritzy. Now she has squirrels, and she wants a squirrel that knows if a nut is bad.
Which, ironically enough, Willy Wonka described as moving so quick and moving like a squirrel in the book. So I just think, I'm like, when I saw that, I was like,
Maybe
that's really
that's
stupid.
why he did it.
I have no idea. That's the thing is, like, again, why would she want a squirrel
Why
that
would
could
she
tell
want
if
a
a nut was
squirrel
bad?
when she can have anything and everything she wants? But she
would totally want a golden egg,
She appreciates the more luxury things in life based on her character
Right.
and the fact that her dad will buy her anything and everything she wants. But she wants a rabid-looking squirrel that likes to shake an egg, or not an egg, a nut.
I mean, that's the thing. I was
disappointed.
I don't know what the point of a lot of this was. Why change things, especially, like, again, it's almost like changing things to make it your own adaptation. Be like, all right, so we're gonna do the golden goose scenes. Like, no. It's squirrels that determine if the nuts are bad. And they're gonna be like, what the fuck, Burton? Why? Oh, because I just, I have a vision. Golden geese. It just doesn't make sense, But nuts determining, because she's a bad nut. She's nuts. And they're gonna be like, okay.
I also, again, and this is also very disappointing to me because I overall generally like Johnny Depp. This was garbage. He was garbage in this.
Mhm.
I wrote in my notes that he had a Joey Graceffa high-pitched little laugh and was like, what the hell is this?
No charm.
There was no comedic timing. He was just odd to be odd and creepy.
Yeah.
And like, sure, Wonka in the first.
Wilder, yeah.
Yeah, played by Gene Wilder. He was odd, but he wasn't scary.
No.
And he didn't hate
Except
the
for
kids.
the tunnel scene.
Yes, but like you understood more with Gene Wilder's character in the Willy Wonka one why he would bring the kids in to pass the factory on. But in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory one, he wanted all of these kids to fail and die and hated them and was grossed out by everything. So then why invite them inside?
From the get-go too, and like even some of the same jokes that are played in both movies where he talks to Mike TV and he's like, you might want to speak louder when you talk to people.
You could tell he was trying to directly use that.
But then with Depp doing it, like mumbler, like you're such a you mumble all the time, and it's just like, shut up. I don't know why he hates kids. I feel like Wilder's Wonka understood children and so therefore knew how to make great candy, whereas Charlie and the Chocolate Factory's Wonka is like, I understand candy, and it's just like, what?
But the dumbest part of that is I don't know why he seems or appears or plays off like he hates the kids when at the same time it's because he's mad at his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so are you just jealous of the kids? Well, then why do you make chocolate to give to the kids if you hate them?
Which is it, Burton?
But then you hate your dad because he never lets you eat the chocolate.
Yeah, it's like you either hate your
I don't
parents
know.
or you
One
hate your
thing I was
kids.
just looking at my notes and laughing about was call them Forrest Gump of the face. The kid flashbacks.
Oh, right. Because he had that.
Oh my god, he had a full-on like metal thing wrapped all through his mouth and around his face. It
the
was
braces.
Like Forrest Gump's braces.
They were like old school. They were meant to be like old school braces for sure, but it was meant to be very exaggerated. It looked like a saw trap. Like it was
gross. Yeah.
It was really, really twisted.
You had the keys in the stomach of your dead cellmate.
Yeah, like it's just insane. Like I don't get it. Yeah, I don't. I just feel like.
I wrote, I never ever want to watch this movie again.
Well, I just feel like Depp and Burton, like we said, have done great things in the past together.
Yeah,
so like,
but
why
Alice
wasn't
and
this good?
Killed it.
Why couldn't these be good? Like what?
Because I feel like they tried to. I don't know. I would love to know the behind the scenes. Was this Depp's Did he have creative freedom, and this is what he chose to do?
You want to hear something
Because
funny?
if he did, I'd be extremely disappointed.
Gene Wilder and Johnny Depp both were nominated for Golden Globes based on their performances.
Oh my god.
So Depp was nominated based on that performance.
I think it's his worst acting performance.
Well, and ironically enough,
He
critics of
didn't
that
even
movie
act
hated his
in it.
portrayal of Wonka. Like critics of the movie when it came out, they were like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah,
Like,
because we didn't ask for it.
right.
We
Well,
didn't need it.
And we didn't ask for him to
It
be Wonka
didn't
either.
add anything. It didn't like reinvent the wheel here. It just made every piece of the story more garbage.
It's like Timothy Chalamet being Wonka. I'm just like, well, why? Because he was in Dune. Is that why? Like, I mean, overall, yeah, I think maybe part of the fact that because there's such a nostalgia for that movie, like this one didn't probably succeed as well because it shouldn't have been made. Like, do you think this movie was needed?
No.
Like, at all?
No, and my final thought that I had on this was the first movie in my life I have regretted watching and feel like I wasted my time to do so.
That's really crazy.
Even more than Alice in Wonderland.
See, to me, they're about equal.
I
I
mean,
think
yes.
I have more affinity for Wonka than Alice, just because
I have more of a love for Alice,
songs
so
are
that
so
speaks
good.
to me.
Yeah, the songs are so good. The acting's great. I think the way the story is told is really funny. There's these interesting breaks with even the Oompa Loompas when the words are like dancing on the screen. It's like
Oh,
it makes
yeah.
it like a sing along for kids. It becomes a kids movie,
Yes.
which is very interesting. Whereas the Tim Burton one is like a movie that actually, you know what's ironic? It's a movie that makes you feel like you're at the dentist office. Like it's like it's like this awful thing. Like if you've ever been stuck in a dentist chair and like they have like a stupid movie playing, like it's that kind of movie where it's like that's the worst thing in the world to be at the dentist office and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is on the TV and you have to sit there with your mouth open and watch that to distract yourself.
I just think it's another repeat. It's the repeat of they made it because they knew that we knew the story and we would take our kids. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't take him.
No.
And here I am watching it for the first time in 2022 versus 2005.
Right.
And when it came out, I knew I didn't want to see it.
Yeah, I had
Because
no
I
desire.
didn't need it. I didn't want to change my opinion about the first one.
Right. I
Like
had
the
no
first
desire.
one does everything so successfully, especially from the book, especially because Roald Dahl wrote the book and the screenplay.
It's very
so
interesting.
It is what it was supposed to be already.
Because you know that Burton probably didn't. It's so interesting because maybe that's another thing too. Like he was dramatically changing the introduction to Wonka, the nut room, like all these different places, the glass elevator usage. Like he was trying to change all that because maybe he was like, no, Roald Dahl didn't do it right. Like this is what it should have been. Like that's what I feel like more is being done with these scenes of just being like, you didn't even try to pay homage to like older things.
I couldn't imagine how liberating it must feel for me if I had the ability to go in and remake any movie I wanted just because of who I was.
That's disgusting.
That's what this is to me.
I know, but that's disgusting.
He got to do it because he wanted to, or they picked him, or whatever, because now that he's done Alice, and he did this first, but now that he's done this, maybe that gave him the leeway to recreate Alice. What else is he going to recreate?
Well, he's done some other.
See, I don't even know.
I mean, you know, it'd be interesting. I mean, there's no James and the Giant Peach original, so we can't really deep dive on stuff like that. But
what do you mean? There's a book and there's a movie.
yeah, but I mean, the book is a book, and like that's a children's book. I mean, it's like you can't extrapolate a ton from that. We can watch it and maybe do one of those. Did you have any inkling in teasing what our next podcast was going to be?
No, because I have no idea what.
I thought we were talking about that Christmas one. Will you shoot your eye out?
God. Yeah. The teaser for the next podcast is. Let's see.
It's marked
The
fragile.
the teaser for the December podcast is. I'm gonna say. I'm thinking.
I mean, it's a.
The icicle and it hit my glasses and
It's a leg lamp, if anything.
the leg lamp.
So that's definitely. I mean, final thoughts entirely though. Like, we know it wasn't needed. I think my final thought on it is very interesting to hear our son's opinion on the movie, and just knowing how it's very opposite. But like you brought up some good points of why he liked the other one. But I just think that that's great to know that Willy Wonka version, even to a child of this generation, could be like, no, that's the better one. Like, because it just 100% is.
I'm not as fired up about this one as it was with the Alice, but
I mean, I'm not. Yeah,
my
not pissed
final
off.
thoughts on this though was I'm disappointed I do genuinely feel like I wasted my time watching Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but obviously we are doing it for the reason of this podcast, and I think it's a great way to see what a modern take on an old story is.
Right.
And this is a fail.
That's interesting that you don't recommend it. No,
No.
So that's a good point you make though too. Is like I feel like one thing I'll say is like from the two Alice movies, and it's interesting that these two topics are both the same director too. That was kind of an accident.
Yeah,
but
that wasn't the intention.
what's interesting to me is that completely blowing the story out of the water for Alice, like exaggerating the hell and just expanding on ideas that don't need to be. But then for this one, not even for the most part, for like for a 16th of the part, telling the same story. So
Yeah.
that at least I could appreciate more about this movie.
He just changed anything and everything he could.
Right. Like we said, like the beginning parts of the movie weren't bad until we started hearing more about
No.
Wonka.
The second we
You
went
know.
into the factory, it went
It went
it
down.
nosedived for me.
Yes, it went very hard down. Don't take that out of context. So I think that this movie at least has a more forgiveness, I guess, for this one than Alice, but still absolutely atrocious. Do not recommend watching. Watch the original. Remember why you loved it. That's my whole thought process on stuff like that. Like, because that's the thing. It's like, it's almost like these movies have to get made. These remakes happen, so people can be like, "Oh yeah, that great movie," and then they just go see the remake, and then they're like, "What?"
Yeah.
And it's like it just reminds you of things, and that's the goal.
I think an interesting point about this before we end this off is saying if Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was your first time being introduced to the story, I think it would be okay. And then if you went back and watched the remake, like if you did, hold on, hear me out. If you watched Charlie and the Chocolate Factory as your first introduction, you would know the story well enough to be able to read the book and or watch the original, but I still think he would think the original were better.
Yeah, but it's like...
But comparing that to the Alice in Wonderland, if you watched Tim Burton's version of it and that was your first introduction, that story's not the same.
Tim Burton's Lord of the Rings.
All, yes. You would watch the others and they would be exponentially more boring because it's not all this fantasy, which is weird because it is. It's entirely fantasy. But
it's fantastical. It's not fantasy.
Yeah, there you go. That's the right way to say that.
Yeah.
So I just think that's an interesting mark to compare it to as far as Tim Burton. He stuck a lot more true to the story, but this came out before that Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I think that, I don't know. It's just, it's interesting because it's two different genres, but neither comes across good. And he should really stop doing remakes of old classics, in my opinion.
Yeah. So to tease the December podcast, just don't shoot your eye out.
Yeah, and then also we're gonna do a blob drawing video that should come out later this month. Kind of Willy Wonka theme.
We're gonna do it in the theme of Charlie and the Chocolate. No, Willy Wonka. I don't care. Both.
I mean, either way, depending on how the blobs look, it depends on what you want.
We'll see how this goes.
So keep a lookout for that. At the very least, I might try to find some free Willy Wonka game or something out there.
And then moving forward in the future, I still haven't gotten the Patreon up, but it should be up hopefully soon.
Oh yeah.
But
this is going to be fun.
Moving forward in the future, for one of the tiers on there, we are going to record ourselves watching like the remakes and the originals of these because we just don't ever shut up. And it's like riff track version of it, which will be there for anyone to throw on while they're watching the movie.
Yeah, it'll just be a way to hate watch with us. And then also enjoy watch with us too.
Yeah, it'll just be more behind the scenes of what goes into the creation of these podcasts.
We just thought that would be a fun thing. Leave a comment about that if that's something you guys think would be fun. If that's something you'd be interested in wanting to have as a tier on the Patreon to help support the channel and the podcast. Willy Wonka the Chocolate Factory is awesome. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is poop.
His Garbaggio.
Yeah, Garbaggio.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks for listening. Appreciate all your ears. Don't shoot your eye out.
And go eat some Wonka chocolate.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
And so it was a study showing that just by being thankful can actually make you happy and happier.
It's gratefulness is the key to happiness in my life.